compare that to you mentioned Steve Jobs. You mentioned I'm going to take it a little bit further and include Larry Fink from BlackRock as well, right? I mentioned Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. So let's put Larry Fink and Steve Jobs in there as well. Can you see a connection between these different figureheads, right? These are heads. Basically, these are heads, right? They and others like them are heads of public listed companies, right? And these public listed companies, right? They function differently, man. Like they through a statement released by a well followed or a CEO with a large following, right? Through one statement, markets can shift, right? Stock prices can go up or down, right? And these are valuation driven entities, right? They're not really in the business of revenue and making money through revenue and stuff. You get what I mean? The influence of market movements and communication from these top CEOs, right? There's a connection there.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was the valid conclusion that we came to. We had a discussion about this in the past about why some companies are so very prevalent or so very insistent on having huge figureheads and it mostly boils down to perception, right? You have Elon Musk making a tweet that can move entire markets, shut down Bitcoin, and overnight. Gigantic market fluctuations happen. When you have a figurehead where everyone is looking at that direction and they can do things with that. So that's something. And also it's kind of, again, this dichotomy between the public listed company and the private company. The private company does not have the same incentive to focus so very intensely on figureheads that they would require it to that extent. But public listed companies, well, that's a different kind of story, right? They much more focus on the idea of perception in the markets. Much more focus on the idea of price earnings or valuation, from the financial aspect. So that's something to take into account. Very interesting.
Right. So we're coming up to the end of this episode. Let me just touch briefly on the CSR, corporate social responsibility, and the sustainability messaging aspect. And also, I think it's pretty important to bring in the rebranding strategy aspect. Now, as I mentioned, corporations are changing. Corporate narrative building is changing towards the individual executive, right? And I mentioned either one or two main executives who are featured as sort of the figureheads of the companies, right? And this necessitates a rebrand. As Khalid mentioned, right, focusing on individual personal branding for executives is not necessarily always important, and particularly it is related to whether the company is public or private.